I'd like to address something today that's very, very big. The universe. It's very, very big. And have you ever asked yourself why the universe is called the universe? Well, it's been handed down, right, and so forth, but I was looking at the word universe. Uni means one, verse means song or story. One song, one story. And I then proceeded to ask myself, does the universe have a religion? You ever thought about that? Does the universe itself have a religion? The dictionary defines the universe as all existing matter and space considered as a whole. Considered as a whole. So why are there so many religions in the world? A man named Muji, some of you may be familiar with him. He's been popular for the last 20 years or so. He says there are many religions. Each one believes it is the only one, but in reality, there is only one, and that one has no religion. I thought that was interesting, that one presence and one power has no religion. So when we look at the inner teachings of spirituality, and I like to look at the inner teachings of spirituality quite a bit. The language that we have around God now is an interesting consideration. Some people call it source energy. And in the ancient inner teachings of the universal of teachings of truth, because if you look behind the exterior of the religions of the world, there is a universal energy behind all of that. And in the Kabbalah, for instance, which is the inner teachings of Judaism, and the Judaic-Christian faith is based upon the inner teachings, say, of the Kabbalah. When you look at the inner teachings, the name of Spirit is called the Godhead. Godhead. And that when that Godhead expresses itself, it expresses itself as divine masculine and divine feminine, much as a one light would express itself in many different colors if refracted through a crystal. And that so the many teachings of the planet, based upon geographical situations and so forth, but the many teachings of the planet have arisen out of those rays or those refracted light of the one source, the one presence, and the one power. And that it's interesting to me, at least, that Charles Fillmore, the co-founder of the Unity Movement, when he sat in the silence in meditation, he sat for upwards of 6 hours a day in the silence. And in 1902, he was asking, as the Unity Movement was flourishing and it was really catching on, he said, what do we call this movement? And his intuition said, we shall call it unity. Because underneath all of the teachings of the world is an essential unity, a universe, a one song, a one presence, and a one power. And that's what, as we move into our depth, into our interior inner temple, we realize that there is only one presence and one power, with many, many expressions of that one presence and one power. And last Wednesday night, it was interesting that there was a man here, and it was a wonderful event. His name title is Sheikh Nurjan Muhammadi. And he was and is a leader within the Sufi community. And up here on the stage, I thought it was just going to be a dialogue between the two of us, but he brought 10 different of his students. And we had a time of chanting, and we had a time of leading up, and I asked him about that. And I said, well, I'm setting an energy. I'm setting an energy in the room. I'm calling upon the Sufi masters of the past so that there is a place for all of us to be in this one presence and one power together. And I asked him, I said, Sheikh, what is your concept of God? Because within the thought paradigm of Sufism, at least in this expression last Wednesday night, there was this very structured way of being. It was almost like we had to practice this and practice that in order to be okay. And I asked him about that, and he said, no, it's about living within a certain energy. So that his concept of God was an energy and a presence and power that was very similar to what we hold in unity. Because all paths are one once we get underneath the veneer of the mind's thinking about what God is and what we are. And I asked him something interesting. I said, well, everybody here that came with you tonight are all male. What is your view of women? Are they equal to men? And he said, no, they're not equal, they're different. Men and women, the distinction between men and women is like a walnut. The outer shell is male consciousness, very hard to break. Women's consciousness is like the inner meat, say, of a walnut, that is very, very special and very, very sacred. And therein lies the nutrients. Because a woman is the carrier of soul, the carrier of the essence of being. And for myself, I was refreshed by that. Because in a way, I was kind of going out on a limb with asking him about that. Because Sufism is an expression of Islam. And I asked him, what do you feel about the extremism within Islam? And he said, well, things get rather interesting when you only operate from the letter of the law versus the spirit of the law. And that we, within this work, both in unity and in Sufism, are living from or endeavoring to live from the spirit of the law of love and oneness. But once you are in the letter of the law, the mind makes up these rigid stories about what the universe is, about what humanity is, about how we're supposed to be in this life. It becomes a mind field of judgment, basically. And that there is a surrendering into the heart. And I asked him, what's the goal in Sufism? What is the goal? And he said, well, you have spirit energy here. And you have self here. And the goal is one, bringing those two together. And I said, well, in the Christian teachings or the Christ teachings, there is this proclamation by Jesus that says, I and the Father are one. And he said, exactly. Exactly. That is the goal. That is the goal of humanity, not just of the goal of avatars or sheikhs or leaders within any particular religious affiliation or expression. The goal is the oneness with the higher self, because the higher self or the inner self is aligned intimately with the universe. See, the universe is not something that's out there on a bright, starry night. We are in the universe. The universe is part of us. And so the goal of religion, then, which is very, very, I feel, under flux and reevaluation by humanity. I mean, I can't tell you how many people, young people in their 30s and 20s, they don't trust religion, but they do trust an honest and sincere conversation about spirituality and how to live in a way that is in alignment with that self, which is in alignment with the universe. And they're looking for ways to express that essence, that love, authentically, not colored over by previous thought forms, made up stories around what that's supposed to look like. And I want to share something with you that was so beautiful on Wednesday night too, is that when it was concluded, and I was talking with the sheikh and all of these other young men, there was a sense of brotherhood between us, and especially with the sheikh. He and I hit it off. It was a wonderful connection. And as they were leaving and going out the door, I felt inwardly a sense of absolute joy. I had a smile on my face that I didn't even want to have it go away. It was wonderful that within the container of that religious expression, behind that expression, was that essential energy. And they offered also a chant towards the end out of, I think, respect for what they perceived this work to be about, a chant for Jesus and Mary. And it was beautiful. It was a very honoring thing. And it was a connecting piece for all of us. So I do feel that spirituality in this day and age across the planet is under reevaluation about what it is that means. And this past week I had to laugh at myself because I have this, a laugh at the situation. I have this little thing on my phone that reminds me 5 times a day some kind of a deep kind of pithy statement once in a while about the deeper aspect of life. And when I was working on some ideas for this message today, it came up, this statement by someone named RuPaul. Not Rand Paul. RuPaul. I'm not familiar with RuPaul, so. Are you? Okay. But this was really cool because this pointed to the synchronicity of living within the universe, the one verse, the one wholeness of life. And RuPaul said, hey, look, I get to create whatever persona I want to, and it's all up to me. And the truth is, we are all basically the universe, pretending to be humans for a brief moment of time. I thought that was pretty darn cool. And that happened just as I was thinking about the universe. There are no mistakes. There is not an atom out of place within the oneness and the universe of all life. And the only place that it seems to be separation is within the human mind. And so when we pray, when we meditate, when we do this inner work, when we sit down and have our devotional time in the morning or before bed at night or whenever, or 5 times a day when it comes on our phone, it is a reminder to let go of the sense of separation, to stop and breathe and remember who it is that we are. It's funny, I came across another source that I wanted to share. There's a Dr. Spencer Johnson who wrote a book back in 1998, and it's an interesting title. It's entitled, Who Moved My Cheese? Remember hearing about this book a few years ago? Who Moved My Cheese? And it's subtitled, An Amazing Way to Deal with Change in Work and Life. Because what we're having a conversation about really is about allowing the change of consciousness. You know, John Shelby Spong, who was a very significant Episcopalian bishop in New York City, who was part of the Jesus Seminar way back in, late 90s, mid-90s, said, you know, people don't come to church for transformation. They come to church for comfort and fellowship. And I said to him one day, I asked him in front of a room filled with a couple hundred people, I said, Bishop Spong, have you ever had a moment of transformation? And he said, no. I'm a religious scholar and I think a very, very good one. But his mind was on such a genius level that it never allowed him to have a simple opening of allowing to become like a small child, to inherit the kingdom of heaven as a downflow of inspiration and transformative energy. And that's what this is really all about. To become like a small child, to be open and receptive to the actual knowledge and wisdom and felt knowing of the universe, to fill us with its truth, not just making up stories about who said what and whether or not it was true in the Bible. No problem there with that on that level. But if we want the authentic, actual experience, then it is really about surrendering and allowing it to be, to happen, to say yes to the movement. Anyway, Dr. Spencer Johnson, who wrote Who Moved My Cheese, said that there are basic principles to apply when encountering change. And just to let you know, I have not forgotten about Jesus and Buddha. We're going to go there. I can just hear my wife in her mind down there going, this is about Jesus and Buddha, isn't it? Don't worry. We'll get there. But here's the deal about Jesus and Buddha. And I'll get back to the sayings with Dr. Spencer Johnson. Jesus and Buddha, for instance, was a prince. He was in a small enclave that his father had constructed so that he would never, in his father's mind, never have to see the suffering of the world. And one time when he was young, maybe early teens, he left that enclave and saw the real suffering of the world. And then he went and had various experiences and ended up sitting by a tree, it says for 6 years, waiting, not wanting to leave until he got the truth of what is. And he had all kinds of experiences of temptation and images and powerful stuff that was trying to distract him. It was the inertia of the planet, really, because this being was so dedicated to wanting to know what the truth was, the truth of life, the truth of the actual state of the universe, and how one is affiliated with that actual truth versus cultural truth, relative truth to time and place and so forth. He sat for 6 years waiting and waiting and waiting. And it says Jesus went out into the wilderness and he also had his training. It says that he went to Egypt, and some sources say he went to Britain and Greece and Persia and India for training during those lost years. He was preparing his consciousness, and so was Buddha, to be a vessel for the true energy of the universe. And that true energy of the universe is available to each of us in this very room, if we are really wanting it. Or we can be, as John Shelby Spong said, only a place for comfort and fellowship. And that's okay. But who are we really? Who are we really? And sometimes it takes experiences for us to get motivated into allowing this true one presence and one power to move through us. But my point is that the religions of the world are, as Eckhart Tolle said, only pointers to truth, pointers to actual experience, that we can use them as modalities for us to become open and receptive to the actual experience. And that's why I asked the question early on, does the universe have a religion? Well, by definition, by Webster's dictionary, it has a religion of wholeness. So whenever we're holding on to our position, holding on to our most cherished beliefs, there comes a time when we suffer enough to let that go, to allow a greater inflow, a greater inspiration ruha, breath, holy breath, oneness with God to fill us, and then the false simply falls away. But back to Dr. Spencer Johnson, around Who Moved My Cheese. And remember, well, our cheese is basically old perception. It's old perception. It's that which we feel is the facts. But he provides some basic principles that when we encounter change, he says, integrity is telling myself the truth. Life moves on, and so should we. What would you do if you weren't afraid? What are you afraid of? Or what you're afraid of is never as bad as what you imagine. When you stop being afraid, you feel good. And his last one of advice for dealing with change is, the quicker you let go of old cheese, the sooner you'll find new cheese. So this is about having an open and receptive mind, trusting the universe, trusting that there is a divine pattern, a presence and power and intelligence that is guiding us and showing us what it is that we do and who we are. Jennifer mentioned during the announcements that on the 18th, this coming Wednesday, Janice Jones is going to be sharing with us on Wednesday night. Well, I went to see her for a session because I wanted to see what that was going to be like. And she had some very interesting modalities. There was this one big lamp that had these colored lights that lined up with the chakras. And she said this lamp was developed by John of God, who is a healer down in Brazil. And then she said, excuse me, I'm going to go upstairs and do something for you and with you that's called the emotion code. And at first, I was laying on this bed, seeing all these lights, and she was somewhere else in the house doing this emotion code with me. And I was just kind of going to myself, well, this is kind of new agey. Kind of, I don't know. A couple days later, there was this really strong experience. My conscious mind sometimes takes a little time to catch up. But there was an energetic process that was going on, and it felt like my consciousness was being pulled like taffy. And it was about releasing past old cheese from my mind. And I called her and I said, this is very uncomfortable. This is not fun. But I've been through it so many times in my life, signing up for this and signing up for that. Some things are false, and some things are really true. And I feel that her work has great worth and great value, and it's accurate. Because on the other end of the letting go, there was a surrender into what is, into more of a greater knowing of the universe, of the actual self, which led to the experience last Wednesday night of great joy. So what is this work about here? Is it just about finding a safe haven in an unsafe world? Or is it about us doing the work that Jesus and Buddha did to allow themselves to be a container of greater and greater light? This is our choice. Each one of us has a choice to be made. Dr. Borg, who I referenced this past week, Marcus Borg, in this book, Jesus and Buddha, The Parallel Sayings. He said, though Jesus did not generate a systematic set of noble truths as the Buddha did, the images running through his teachings point to the same path. Those who empty themselves will be exalted, and those that exalt themselves will be emptied. All with an intention of coming into alignment with the universe, the actual experience of the universe. And both of these great personages who went through so much to prepare the way for us, they were way showers. They did the work. They allowed themselves to be transformed so that they could be vessels of light. You know, compare and contrast here just for a moment in the book of Luke. If anyone from the Bible, if anyone strikes you on the cheek, offer the other also. In Buddha's teachings, if anyone should give you a blow with his hand, with a stick, or with a knife, you should abandon any desires to utter no evil words. So what's that about? Is that just about moral teachings? Or is that about being within a vibration of the universe that is an actual way of life, a way of being? So your homecoming work this week, if you choose to accept it, and when I say homecoming work, not homework, homecoming to yourself, is to ask yourself, I would ask myself, and I will, what is my religion? What is that supposed to mean? Who am I? My answer is, I am that which I seek. I am that which I seek. Just allow that to soak in for a moment. I am that which I seek. I am that I am. God bless. Thank you.